David Chen operates small independent repair shop on Kepler Station's commercial level. Modest storefront squeezed between a Korathi textile merchant and a human restaurant, marked by simple sign reading, Chen's Technical Repairs, in 3 Alliance languages. He's been on the station for 2 years, having left Earth to pursue better economic opportunities in the frontier stations where technical expertise is in higher demand, and where independent operators can build businesses without competing against established corporate repair chains that dominate the core worlds. The work is straightforward: fixing personal communication devices when they suffer software corruption or physical damage, repairing household environmental systems when temperature regulation fails or air filtration develops problems, diagnosing and replacing failed components in the 1,000 different pieces of technology that station residents depend on for daily life. David's built modest reputation for competent work at fair prices. He's not the cheapest repair option on the station. There are vendors who undercut his rates by using questionable replacement parts or by cutting corners on diagnostics. But he's reliable, and his repairs actually last, which creates steady stream of repeat customers who value quality over minimal cost. He serves diverse clientele: humans who prefer working with human technician who understands Earth technology standards, Thessari residents who need repairs on equipment that other species technicians aren't familiar with, Korathi, Vendari, various other Alliance species whose personal devices or household systems need fixing. David doesn't distinguish between customers based on species or social status. Good repair work is good repair work regardless of who's paying for it. He charges based on time required, complexity of the problem, cost of replacement parts. Fair pricing that reflects actual value provided rather than varying rates based on customer characteristics. 3 weeks ago, Thessari woman entered his shop carrying damaged data tablet, expensive model manufactured for Thessari market, sophisticated device that handles everything from personal communication to financial transactions to entertainment media. She explained the problem. The tablet had suffered water damage when her household environmental system malfunctioned and created condensation that leaked onto the device while it was charging. The tablet wouldn't power on. She needed data recovery. The device contained important files she couldn't afford to lose, and hardware repair if possible. David examined the tablet, identified the extent of the damage. Water intrusion had corroded several internal components. The storage module appeared intact, which was good news for data recovery. But successful repair would require replacing the corroded components, cleaning residual contamination from the circuit boards, and careful testing to ensure the device would function reliably after restoration. He quoted her 300 credits for the work, 180 credits for replacement parts, 120 credits for labor, reflecting approximately 4 hours of detailed repair and testing work at his standard rate. She agreed without negotiation, left the tablet with him, returned 2 days later when David sent notification that the repair was complete. David presented the restored tablet, demonstrated that it was functioning properly and that all data had been successfully recovered. Presented the bill, 300 credits as quoted. She paid through standard credit transfer. David provided receipt documenting the transaction. Professional, routine, completely unremarkable by David's standards. She thanked him for the quality work and left. The entire interaction took perhaps 15 minutes total across both visits. Nothing about it stood out to David as unusual or significant. Just another satisfied customer, another successful repair, another fair transaction where value was exchanged appropriately. Except that in the days following that transaction, David begins noticing something strange. The way other people on the station react to him has changed. Subtly, but unmistakably. Thessari merchants who previously greeted him warmly when he passed through the commercial district now show careful distance. Still polite, but where before there was casual friendliness. brief conversations about business conditions, jokes about station politics, the easy social interaction between neighboring vendors. Now there's formality. Brief acknowledgments. No lingering conversation. Station personnel who used to make casual small talk now keep interactions brief and professional. The Thessari security officer, who normally stops to chat about the latest sports results from the Thessari home systems, now offers curt nod and continues on patrol without pausing. Human vendors who interact regularly with the Thessari community also show changed behavior. Not as pronounced as the shift among Thessari themselves, but definitely different. More reserved, slightly more formal. Nothing overtly hostile. No one refuses to do business with him or treats him with obvious antagonism. But there's definite shift in social temperature. Cooling that's consistent enough across multiple interactions that David can't dismiss it as coincidence or imagination. He's walking through the commercial district 3 days after the tablet repair when he passes group of Thessari vendors who operate neighboring stalls. Merchants. He's exchanged friendly greetings with countless times over 2 years. They're engaged in animated conversation, their skin showing the vibrant colors that indicate Thessari social enjoyment. The kind of casual interaction that happens constantly in commercial areas where vendors pass time between customers. As David approaches, the conversation stops mid-sentence. All three vendors turn to look at him. Their skin colors shift to more neutral tones, not hostile colors, but definitely not the warm social colors they were displaying moments before. They acknowledge him with brief nods, wait in silence as he passes, resume their conversation only after he's well past their stalls, and even then he can sense that the resumed discussion is more subdued than what preceded his interruption. It's uncomfortable, being the cause of conversation-stopping silence, being watched with expressions he can't quite interpret, not anger or disgust, but something between wariness and curiosity, maybe mixed with concern or confusion. A Thessari station security officer who normally exchanges casual greetings, brief conversations about sports, about station maintenance issues, about the general friendly small talk that develops between people who encounter each other regularly. Now, offers minimal acknowledgement when their paths cross during David's walk back to his shop. Officer Kethros, David greets as usual. Technician Chen, Kethros responds, nods, continues on patrol without the usual pause for conversation. The formality is jarring. Kethros has never been formally distant before. They're not close friends, but they've had dozens of brief friendly interactions over 2 years. This sudden shift to rigid professional distance without explanation is concerning. David initially tries to dismiss it. Maybe he's imagining patterns that don't exist. Maybe Kethros was busy with security matter. Maybe the vendors were discussing something private and his passing just happened to coincide with natural pause in conversation. But the pattern repeats too consistently over the following days. Too many interactions where warmth that previously existed has been replaced with careful distance. Too many Thessari residents who now treat him with formality that wasn't present before. Something has changed. David doesn't understand what or why, but the change is undeniable. The shift in how people treat David becomes more pronounced over the following week. He's not being ostracized exactly. People still conduct business with him, still acknowledge him when their paths cross. But the easy social normalcy that existed before has been replaced with something more formal and careful. He's purchasing supplies from Thessari electronics vendor when he notices the change most clearly. The vendor, Vayara, who sold him replacement parts regularly for 2 years, is professional and efficient but notably cooler than usual. Before, Vayara would ask about David's business, share gossip about other vendors, joke about station politics, the comfortable social interaction between regular trading partners. Now, Vayara processes the transaction efficiently, provides the components David requested, accepts payment, offers minimal conversation beyond what the business exchange requires. Is everything okay, Vayara? David asks, genuinely concerned that he might have offended her somehow without realizing it. Vayara's skin shows uncertain purple mixing with cautious blue. Everything is fine, Technician Chen. Your order is complete. Do you require anything else? The formality in her response, addressing him by title rather than by first name, maintaining rigid vendor-customer boundary instead of the friendly rapport they've built over 2 years, confirms that something is definitely wrong even if David can't identify what. He decides to consult Marcus Webb, human merchant who operates import-export business on the station and who's been in the frontier territories longer than David. Marcus knows the local social dynamics, understands the complex cultural protocols that govern interaction between different species and different social classes. David finds Marcus in his office reviewing shipping manifests. Marcus, can I ask you something about Thessari social customs? Of course, Marcus says, setting aside his work. What's the question? David explains the situation. The tablet repair, the fair commercial pricing, the sudden shift in how Thessari residents treat him afterward. I can't figure out what I did wrong. The repair was successful, the customer paid without complaint, but ever since that transaction people have been treating me differently. Colder, more formal, like I violated some social rule I didn't know existed. Marcus's expression shifts from casual interest to careful attention. Describe the customer who brought you the tablet. Physical appearance, bearing, clothing, anything you remember. David recalls what he observed. Tall, even for Thessari, probably around 2 meters. Skin showing elaborate chromatic patterns, lots of gold and silver mixed with blues and greens. Expensive clothing, very fine materials. Confident bearing like someone used to authority. Did you notice the specific arrangement of the gold and silver patterns? Marcus asks, particularly around her face and hands. David tries to remember. I noticed the patterns were elaborate, but I wasn't paying close attention to the specific designs. I was focused on examining the damaged tablet, not on analyzing my customer's appearance. Why? Marcus is quiet for a moment, his expression showing concern. David, I think you just charged full commercial rate to Lady Seraphina of House Meridian, one of the most powerful Thessari nobles on the station. So, David responds, genuinely confused. She needed repair work. I provided it. I charged fair price for the service. Why would her social status change what I should charge? Because in Thessari noble culture, when aristocrats require services from commoners, the expected protocol is very different from standard commercial transactions, Marcus explains carefully. Commoners are generally expected to either refuse payment entirely, treating it as honor to serve nobility, or to charge purely nominal fee that acknowledges the social hierarchy. Something like 10 or 20 credits for work that would normally cost 300, symbolic payment, that preserves the form of commercial exchange, while making clear that the commoner understands their lower social position. David's confusion is shifting toward irritation. You're saying I was supposed to provide my skilled labor essentially for free because she's aristocrat, that I should have worked for 4 hours and eaten the cost of 180 credits in parts just to acknowledge that she's more important than I am. I'm saying that's what the cultural expectations are here, Marcus clarifies. Whether those expectations are fair or reasonable is a different question. But yes, by charging Lady Seraphina full commercial rate, by treating her as equal customer subject to same pricing as everyone else, you've violated fundamental protocol about how commoners should interact with nobility. That's absurd, David says flatly. I'm independent business owner. I provide skilled services. Why should I give away my labor just to flatter someone's aristocratic ego? Because she's not just someone, Marcus says. House Meridian has significant economic and political power on this station. And the broader social system here depends on commoners showing deference to nobility through exactly these kinds of unequal exchanges. When you charged her fair commercial rate, you sent message that you either don't understand the social hierarchy or that you deliberately reject it. Either way, you've marked yourself as anomaly. David processes this. So the reason everyone is treating me differently isn't because they're personally offended. It's because I've demonstrated that I don't follow the standard hierarchy protocols. And now, they don't know how to categorize me or how to interact with me safely. Exactly, Marcus confirms. Thessari nobles have power to cause serious problems for commoners who offend them. People who violate the deference protocols, even inadvertently, can face consequences ranging from social ostracism to economic retaliation to actual legal trouble if nobility decides to press complaints. By treating Lady Seraphina as regular customer, you've created uncertainty. People are being careful around you because they don't know if you're about to face consequences, and they don't want to be associated with you if you do. What kind of consequences? David asks, now genuinely concerned rather than just irritated. Could be anything from informal economic pressure, Thessari vendors refusing to sell to you, making it harder for you to get the parts you need for repairs, to formal complaints about inappropriate conduct that could affect your business license. Could be nothing. Some nobles might actually respect the fact that you treated them as equal, but most nobles expect deference, and violating those expectations creates risk. Marcus pauses. The bigger issue is that you've revealed something about how the system works. Everyone else provides free or heavily discounted service to nobility, because that's the price of operating in social hierarchy. You charged fair commercial rate, which exposes that all the voluntary deference everyone else provides isn't really voluntary. It's coerced through threat of consequences if you don't comply. By treating the transaction as equal exchange, you've made visible the inequality that the system normally hides through rhetoric about honor and tradition. David sits with that for a moment. So I'm being punished not primarily for offending Lady Seraphina, but for revealing that the whole deference system is based on coercion rather than on genuine respect. That's probably part of it, Marcus agrees. Though I wouldn't assume you're being punished yet. More like, people are recalibrating, trying to figure out what your violation means and how they should respond. The careful distance you're experiencing might be temporary while everyone processes what happened. Over the next several days, David observes more carefully how people interact with Thessari nobility. Paying attention to the social dynamics he'd previously noticed only peripherally, focused as he was on his own business, rather than on the complex status hierarchies around him. He watches Korathi vendor refuse payment from Thessari noble who purchases expensive fabric. The noble offers credits, the vendor declines, saying it's honor to provide such fine customer with quality goods. The noble insists. The vendor eventually accepts 50 credits for fabric that David knows costs at least 400 credits wholesale. The entire exchange is performed as gracious negotiation, but the underlying dynamic is clear. The vendor is expected to provide substantial discount, and accepting even token payment is framed as concession from the noble rather than as the vendor receiving fair compensation. He observes human restaurant owner providing elaborate meal to Thessari aristocrat and household staff. When the meal concludes and the noble asks about payment, the owner quotes 100 credits for food that would normally cost at least 500. The noble pays 150 and describes it as generous compensation, while the owner expresses gratitude for the noble's patronage, as though receiving 150 credits for 500 credits worth of food represents favorable business transaction. He sees service providers of all species treating aristocratic requests not as commercial transactions, but as commands to be fulfilled with deference and minimal compensation. The entire economy seems to operate on two-tier system: fair commercial exchange between social equals, and grossly unequal extraction where nobles receive goods and services at fraction of actual cost, while providers perform gratitude for the honor of serving their social superiors. And he sees how people react to Lady Seraphina specifically when she moves through the commercial district. Conversations stop, not with the comfortable pause of greeting an acquaintance, more like the tense silence of students when strict teacher enters classroom. Wariness mixed with performance of respect. Vendors avert their eyes. Not casual glance away, but deliberate avoidance of direct eye contact that might be interpreted as presumptuous or challenging. Keeping gaze lowered or directed elsewhere, signaling through body language that they recognize her superior status. Station guards maintain rigid professional distance. When Seraphina passes security checkpoint, the guards don't engage in the casual banter they use with regular station residents. Don't ask friendly questions or make small talk. Stand at attention, acknowledge her with formal respect, resume normal behavior only after she's gone. The shift is visible, from relaxed professionals doing routine job to people aware they're being observed by someone with power over them. The deference isn't affection, isn't genuine respect in the sense of admiring someone's character or achievements. It's caution edged with fear. Self-protective behavior from people who understand that aristocrats can cause problems for commoners who fail to show proper submission. David realizes that by treating Lady Seraphina as equal customer, by charging her fair commercial rate, and providing professional service without the performance of deference that everyone else engages in, he's done something that others are too afraid or too invested in the hierarchy to do. He's acted as though social rank doesn't determine whether someone should pay fairly for services they receive. As though noble and commoner are just descriptive categories rather than hierarchical positions that require unequal exchange and ritualized submission. And that simple act of treating commercial transaction as equal exchange between parties who both benefit from fair value trade, that's apparently radical enough to make him anomaly that others don't know how to respond to. 1 week after the original tablet repair transaction, Lady Seraphina returns to David's shop. He's immediately alert, Marcus's warnings about potential consequences making him cautious about what this visit might mean. Aristocratic retaliation for failure to provide proper deference. Formal complaint about inappropriate conduct. Economic pressure to close his business or force him to accept the standard hierarchy protocols. But when Seraphina enters, her bearing doesn't suggest hostility or confrontation. She's carrying small diagnostic device, and her expression shows frustration rather than anger. "Technician Chen," she greets formally. "I have repair need that I'm hoping you can address." "Of course, Lady Seraphina," David responds, matching her formality while trying to assess what's actually happening. "What's the problem?" She places the diagnostic device on his workbench. My household environmental control system is malfunctioning. Temperature regulation is inconsistent, and the air filtration is producing unusual odors. I've had household staff examine it, but they can't identify the problem. I need professional diagnostics and repair. David nods. I can certainly handle environmental system repair. May I ask, if your household staff have already looked at it, why bring it to external technician rather than having them continue working on the problem? Serafina's skin shows thoughtful blue mixing with what might be amused gold. Because my household staff treat repair work as command from superior rather than as professional service transaction. They don't tell me honestly what the problem is or what it will cost to fix. They tell me what they think I want to hear, and they don't charge appropriate fees for their expertise because they're afraid that asking fair compensation would offend me. She pauses, her skin shifting to more complex pattern. You're the only technician on this station who charged me fair price for competent work, rather than treating my business as opportunity for social positioning or as obligation requiring unpaid labor. I need my environmental system fixed properly, and I prefer working with someone who will tell me honestly what's wrong and what it will cost rather than performing deference while providing substandard service, because they're too intimidated to do their job effectively. David processes this statement. The aristocrat who everyone treats with fear-tinged deference is explicitly choosing to hire the technician who didn't provide that deference. I'd be happy to diagnose and repair your environmental system, Lady Serafina. My standard rate for environmental system work is 150 credits for initial diagnostic plus parts and labor for actual repairs, depending on what the diagnostic reveals. Probably looking at total cost between 300 and 600 credits, depending on problem severity. That's acceptable, Serafina says without negotiation. When can you perform the diagnostic? I can come to your residence this afternoon if that works for your schedule, David offers. That would be satisfactory, Serafina confirms. She provides her residential address and preferred time, then prepares to leave. As she's departing, David notices through his shop's front window that several vendors and station personnel are watching the interaction. Their expressions combine shock. The aristocrat is hiring the technician who violated deference protocols, with confusion, and what might be either respect or concern that David has further cemented his position outside the standard social hierarchy. Serafina notices the observers too. Her skin shows amused gold briefly before returning to more neutral tones. You've created quite a stir, Technician Chen. People don't know what to make of someone who treats nobility as customers rather than as superiors deserving unpaid service. I just charge fair prices for good work, David says. I don't think anyone's social status should determine whether they pay for value they receive. That's radical position in system built on exactly that premise, Serafina observes. Then quieter, it's also refreshing. I'll see you this afternoon for the diagnostic. David arrives at Lady Serafina's residence that afternoon carrying his diagnostic equipment. The residence is located in the station's premium housing section, large quarters with high-quality furnishings, artwork, the kind of luxurious living space that wealth and status provide. Serafina's household staff greet him with expressions combining surprise and wariness. They're clearly uncertain how to treat technician who's been hired directly by their employer, rather than being assigned through the usual household service channels, and who apparently doesn't follow normal protocols for interacting with nobility. David conducts his environmental system diagnostic professionally, identifies the problem, failed sensor in the air filtration unit causing incorrect feedback to the temperature regulation system, creating cascade of malfunctions. The repair requires replacing the sensor and recalibrating the system, work that will take approximately 3 hours. He explains the problem to Serafina in clear technical terms without condescension or oversimplification. Quotes his price, 400 credits total including the replacement sensor and labor. Proceed with the repair, Serafina authorizes. While David is working, Serafina asks him questions. Not about the repair specifically, but about his business, his background, his experience on the station. You've been here 2 years, she observes. You must have noticed by now how social hierarchies operate. Why do you continue charging nobility the same rates you charge everyone else when you know it violates expected protocols? David pauses his work to answer honestly. Because I don't think providing skilled labor should be free or discounted just to acknowledge someone else's higher social status. I'm independent business owner. I have costs, parts, tools, time, expertise I developed through years of training. Charging fair prices for fair work is how I support myself. If aristocrats want special treatment, they can hire household staff and pay them salaries that compensate for the unpaid deference labor they're expected to provide. I'm not employed by nobility. I'm self-employed technician offering services at market rates. You recognize that position might create difficulties for you, Serafina says. That refusing to participate in the deference system makes you an anomaly that could face social or economic consequences. I'm aware, David confirms. Marcus Webb explained the risks. But I'd rather face those consequences than compromise my principles about fair economic exchange. Besides, if I started providing free service to nobility, where does it stop? Do I also give discounts to government officials? To anyone with power who might retaliate if I charge them fairly? At some point, I'm just operating charity for powerful people while trying to make living from the customers who lack leverage to demand free labor. Serafina's skin shows a proving gold. You've identified exactly the problem with the system. The people with most resources and least need for economic assistance are the ones who extract unpaid or underpaid labor from those with fewer resources and greater need for fair compensation. It's fundamentally unjust, but it persists because challenging it creates personal risk that most people aren't willing to accept. Why are you willing to pay fair rates when you could demand the same discounted service everyone else provides? David asks, genuinely curious. Because I don't need subsidized services, Serafina replies. I have substantial wealth. Paying 400 credits for environmental system repair doesn't strain my resources in any way. Expecting you to provide that repair for 50 credits or for free, just to flatter my social status. That's extracting value from you that I don't need while you absorb costs you can't afford to give away. It's exploitative regardless of how it's dressed up in language about honor and tradition. Also, she continues, I've discovered that people who are afraid to charge me fairly are also afraid to tell me truth about other things. My household staff won't honestly assess repair needs or give me accurate information about costs because they're too busy performing deference. You charged me fair price for the tablet repair and gave me honest assessment of the damage and the work required. That honesty is more valuable to me than the discount would be. David completes the environmental system repair, tests the system thoroughly to ensure it's functioning properly, presents Serafina with detailed report documenting what was wrong, what he did to fix it, and verification that the system is now operating within proper parameters. She pays the 400 credits without negotiation, thanks him for professional service, asks if she can hire him for future repair needs as they arise. Of course, David agrees. Though I should warn you that continuing to hire the technician who violates deference protocols might create complications for you with other nobility who expect you to demand the same unpaid service they extract from commoners. Let them complain, Serafina says with amused gold showing in her skin colors. I'm not interested in exploiting people just to maintain appearances of superiority that require treating others unjustly. If other nobles object to me paying fair rates for good work, that's their problem, not mine. In the weeks following, David notices the social dynamics around him shifting again. not back to the warmth that existed before. The fact that he violated standard protocols is still visible and still affects how people interact with him. But the careful, fearful distance lessens somewhat. Part of that shift comes from Lady Seraphina making visible choice to continue hiring him and paying fair rates. Her willingness to work with technician, who doesn't provide deference labor signals that at least one powerful noble doesn't object to equal economic exchange, which reduces the risk others face by maintaining normal business relationships with David. Part of it comes from other people, particularly those who resent the extraction that the hierarchy requires, recognizing that David's approach represents alternative to the coerced deference they've been providing. Some begin treating him with respect specifically because he demonstrated that refusing unpaid aristocratic service is possible, even if risky. But the fundamental dynamic remains. David has marked himself as outside the standard social hierarchy by treating commercial transactions as equal exchanges regardless of customers' social status. That makes him an anomaly that some admire, some fear, some resent, but that no one can quite categorize according to normal social rules. The transaction was simple. 300 credits exchanged, recorded, acknowledged without ceremony. To the human, it was routine payment for service rendered, nothing more. Then he noticed the way others looked at her. Conversations stopping, vendors averting eyes, guards maintaining fearful distance. The deference wasn't respect, it was caution edged with fear. The price he charged was fair by any standard, yet in this place, accepting payment from her carried meaning he didn't account for. Human normalcy colliding with unspoken hierarchy. Treating someone as equal revealing the invisible rules everyone else obeys.